guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be working on some turn signals for a Uforce 1000. This is obviously not my machine, mine's back over there, but got together with this gentleman. Last video I put a remote start in this, and this one we're going to go over the turn signals a little bit more in depth than the previous video that I had put out when I put the turn signals on my machine. Like I kind of explained in the last video, when I originally did the turn signals on mine, I didn't record anything on it. I never planned on starting a YouTube channel or doing any of that. Just threw a video out there because people on some of the Facebook groups were asking for a video, so I just did a quick rundown. But I still get a ton of questions on it because it wasn't in depth. So we're going to try to make this one a little bit more in depth. Now, I'm not going to go through and film myself doing disassembly of the actual vehicle itself and taking plastic cover pieces off. That stuff, you can figure that out on your own. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where the wiring is from the factory that you can utilize, how to tie in to it and make it so it's still serviceable for a mechanic and everything else, and show you how that all works in more detail. The disassembly of the machine, that's on you. It's really not difficult. It's not like there's a ton of hidden nuts and bolts to it. So without further ado, we'll get into it here, and I'll kind of start by showing you the parts and pieces that you'll kind of need to get going on it. And I'll try to throw some links down in the description of the video so that you have a little bit better idea. I probably won't throw it in there for tape and wire connectors and stuff like that. You can figure that out on your own. I'll throw suggestions out there as I see fit, but as far as the actual hardware that you need to make it happen, I'll throw those links down there. Like always, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, sign up for notifications. You know when I got other stuff coming out, and check out some of the other videos on the channel. So here we go. All right, first off, for those of you that watched the remote start video, nope, still haven't cleaned the bench off because I am lazy. But anyway, kind of the basics of what you're going to need: miscellaneous wire crimpers, strippers, all that good stuff. A straight pick tool I like to use. Utility knife, I like the ones where you can slide the blade out and snap it off and get a sharp new edge. Good electrical tape. Good electrical tape, not the crap at the dollar store. This is the 3M Super 33. Recommend that. Solder, soldering pin. I do have some heat shrink. There'll be a couple instances where I can use that, but most of it is going to end up having to be taped. I've got some of the heat shrink wire connectors, crimp connectors, but I don't think we're going to be using any of those anywhere here. But we might. I'll have to recall myself. As far as the actual parts you need to order, need a trailer wiring connector. This one is the Hopkins, get the actual model number on there, the 48895. This one, it's important. There's other brands out there that may work just fine. I know I use this one on my own, but you want to make sure it's compatible with LED taillights. Don't get the cheap ass one that only does incandescent lights, because that's not going to probably work for you. We're going to do the turn signals just like what I have on my machine, and you can use different styles if you'd like. These are simple and weatherproof and everything, but these are off of Amazon. They're from Online LED, and I've had pretty good luck with their products before. Two parts you're going to have to get from CFMOTO, and you can go to, it's Current RV, but it's like CFMOTOUSAparts.com or something like that. Google CFMOTO Parts USA and it'll come up. But we've got our the actual factory turn signal switch. Haven't opened it yet. And the factory flasher module. Part numbers for those right there, if it will focus. That's kind of blurry, but you get the point. And I'll put it down in the description. But those two parts got to get from CFMOTO. Sure, you can use an aftermarket setup and try to hack it all in there, but why when this all plugs in? Assortment of wire loom that we're going to use. And then I don't have them sitting out here, but zip ties and all that good crap. So first things first, what we're going to do is I just have the bottom of the dash sitting in the unit right now. It's not, well, it's held up by 2 bolts just because I had to back it out and move it and pull my work van in because we got snow last night and had to plow. But either way, we got to get at the area underneath the dash right down in here, and you can do it through the storage cubby when you pull this out, because I can, now you can't see because I don't have a flashlight, didn't think to bring it over, but you can get at the wires just through there. But you'll see I'm going to have this taken off just because it's more room and I have fat hands, and yeah, it's just all around easier for me. But what we're doing is we're accessing the stock turn signal switch harness, and that'll be going into one of these blank panels. To take out these blanks, and I'm sorry it's a little jumpy here on the camera, just take a little your utility knife and you can just kind of slit right down the sides of that, and these knockouts will pop right out. The turn signal relay, it's got a little rubber thing on it and it sits right on this. The wiring for it is probably tucked down inside the hole here. I'll pop some of this stuff. I don't think we have to pop this off. It's probably just going to be this panel underneath here, but that's all right because we'll have to pull all that off anyway to get at wiring, yeah, later. But I'll get this stuff kind of taken apart, show you what the harness looks like that the flasher plugs into. We'll get that part of it done because that's the easy stuff, and then we'll move on to the next. Okay, the biggest question that I see is people can't find the harness for the turn signal flasher. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull the panel off that's up above the fender, this black plastic panel. This is that panel. It's held in with 4 of these annoying push pins. Take those out, pull it off. Literally, it is right here hanging. It has a little blank cover on it, but this is it. It's literally just hanging here. Mine was I think mine was tie wrapped up to the winch wiring, or this one looks like it's zip tied right onto the cross member so it doesn't get into anything. Snip that zip tie, and you're going to push it up through the opening with the winch wires up there. It's that easy. We're going to end up zip tying this all back on there. I'm not worried about it right now. Alright, so it's up under the hood now. I'm trying to do this all one-handed. It's not the easiest. We'll see if I can hold that under my... Oh, that's magic. How is he doing that? Just floating that in the mid-air and almost dropping it and still can't do it. Okay, that's not working. Alright, up under the hood. Again, we've got this opened up. We took the cap off of it. I was an idiot. The actual I kept thinking for some reason it was this piece that you had to push down. I forgot, because it looks like it should be. It's actually down on the bottom of the plug. You push that. We're going to put a little bit of dielectric on that, because that's what I like to do. If I can find it, there we go. Give her a little squirt. Guess it helps if we turn up the squirtability. There we go. Then we got our relay. Click it in. And then it's kind of janky, but it works, I guess. It just sits on there like that. That's installed. So, flasher is in. Moving to the inside, I cut out the opening. See if I can get a light on it, because I know that lighting is crap. Opening is cut out, and I just have the turn signal switch kind of pushed through, and it's sitting there. Don't click it in yet, because inevitably if you click it in, you'll have it clicked in upside down, and your left will be your right will be your left, and then you've got to fight to try and get that switch back out, because they don't come out as easy as they go in. So, under the dash, see if I can get this light stuck up there where there's some light. You're gonna have this big bundle of wires right here, and it'll be zip tied to the cross member up here. Go ahead and snip it loose and slide this sheeting back. And you've got all these plugs. You're going to find the one that your turn signal clicks into, and that'll be done. Alright, I had to shut off the camera in order to do it because it needs two hands, but got it plugged in together. You'll notice that the wire colors match on both sides of the plugs. That's how you can tell which one you want. Make sure it's firmly seated. I put dielectric grease on that one too, just because it's the right thing to do, I think. And we'll go around. Turn our key on. Hit our switch for the left-hand turn signal. And you'll notice the left-hand indicator is flashing. Hit the right-hand side. Right-hand one is flashing, so we actually got it right on the first try. Then you can take that and push that switch straight back into the hole. Double check, make sure that the switch still works. Perfect. That's the easy part done. Now we'll move on to the more challenging part. As I said in my other videos, all of the wiring for the turn signals is already up front. It's kind of in the back. That's where it gets a little bit goofy, but we'll start on the front and I'll show you how to do that. All right, on these machines, the left-hand turn signal, the positive is going to be orange, both front and back, and your right side or passenger side is going to be light blue for your positive for your turn signals. What we've got here, this is our headlight harness. You can tell because it goes to the headlight. And if you were to do the factory swap for turn signals, the turn signal would be up in the actual headlight. So we know that that wire is going to come into here. You can see, because we have the United States ones, where the orange would be is a little blank pin in there. So if we go past the harness here, we can see we've got our factory wiring in here. The orange, like I said, is going to be our positive. The green on this machine is the ground to the headlight. I've just got my probes stuck in the wires there, so you can kind of see on the meter so that you can test it. Although I'm giving you the wire colors, always make sure you test it. You could run into some instance where the factory was out of that color. Who knows? They switched it for some odd reason because you're in New Zealand or whatever, and I don't know, maybe they come with turn signals there. Probably. It's probably just us that don't get them. But I'll turn it on. It flashes really fast, and the meter isn't fast enough to throw up, 12 volts every time it flashes, but you'll notice it starts flickering. Camera's going to get a little jumpy here as I try to do this, but you have to turn on the ignition. And then turn on the turn signals and you'll see it start flashing. So that's our left. It's going to do the same thing over on the right hand side. And we're going to tie it in basically the same. Now, I could have stripped this wiring back right here, except we don't have the turn signal wire right here. That, and even if we did, I would go back behind the plug here. That way, say he puts this thing in a ditch and bangs up the front end, they have to unplug it and replace a headlight. They can still just unclip this, unplug it. Doesn't mess with our wiring at all. Makes it nice and simple for service later. Moving over to the other side, I've already got this one tied in. Again, we had to remove the panel up here. Passenger side, it's going to be your light blue and your green. I didn't have any light blue wiring, so I just used blue and green. Tied them in. On this one, I actually cut it and used heat shrink. The other one, I'm just going to solder in and tape and put a orange and green tail on that. But I've got it down, and then what I did is I installed a weather pack plug on here so that it'll be weatherproof, and we'll route that along the frame and out to the front bumper where we're going to mount the lights. I'm going to get the other side all put together. I'll get this stuff kind of all zip tied up and wire loomed, and I'll show you what the final result looks like before we get into drilling in the lights. Real quick before I get too far with this, just so you guys know what I'm talking about when I say I'm going to tie in with solder and tape. This one, obviously, the orange is already done. It's soldered in there and then just wrapped with tape. This one I've got all soldered up, ready to be taped up. That's kind of what I mean. When I get to the back, I'll try to get a little bit closer, or maybe get a video of doing it on a wire back there, but this doesn't lend itself real well to having the camera in the way and doing it. Also, I do have a little 3-part series for basic power sports wiring and automotive wiring, and I kind of go over all that stuff in that video, so go ahead and check that out, and you'll see what I mean there too. Alright, we got everything tied back up. Everything is zip tied along the frame rail here, just like it was from the factory. Our new wires come down into a weather pack plug on this side. One note on using plugs like these: try to keep some consistency in your work. Like as I'm holding this, the retaining clip on the top, if you flip it over and look at it, green is on the right, and you'll notice I did the same on the other side. It's not critical as long as you get the lights wired the same way and not backwards, but trying to keep some consistency makes it a little bit more professional. But yeah, everything's all tied up just like it was from the factory. Little fun fact, this plug right here does have accessory power in it that is turned on and off with the key. Just so you know, it's got a green and then an orange with a red stripe. Green is ground, orange with a red stripe is your switched power. I have no idea what it's fused at. And I will tell you that when you turn on the ignition, it goes to 12 volts. When you turn it off, it holds 12 volts for like 30 or 45 seconds. It's kind of weird. A lot of the accessory circuits in this machine seem to do that. I don't understand why. That's why I added a accessory fuse block on mine, because that was annoying to me. But anyway, moving over to the other side, we got the same thing. It's all tied up, re-supported around the frame rail, comes down. There's our weather pack plug. Again, looking at the retainer right there, flip it over, ground is on the right hand side. Just, I don't know, it's a quirk of mine when people do things all mismatched. But all right, at this point we're ready to actually mount the lights on it and get those all wired together. We're going to do the same thing that I did on my machine over here and just do 4 lights on either side. I'll show you kind of how I laid those out and how I drilled it and all that good stuff. Alright guys, I apologize for the obnoxiously bright lighting right now, but I'm doing that for a reason, because this is a part where you kind of need some good light. So now you can see how pale I really am. But anyway, this is the part of the project where people start getting a little bit sketched out about doing their own turn signals when you got to start drilling into these panels. You do want to be careful with it, because I don't know how much this plastic front bumper is from CFMOTO, but I'm sure it's probably a couple $100 or so, and who wants to spend a couple $100 they didn't plan on spending. Here's the method that I use on it, and seemed to work out pretty well. I tried to explain it online to some people, and it was kind of challenging. You have a natural curve in the bumper right here where this little dip is. What I do is I take some blue painter's tape, make sure you got enough to go kind of wrap around the edge, and then get out all the way as far as your lights are going to go. And be mindful, the further inside of the bumper you get, the more likelihood that there's going to be bracing or anything in there that could get in the way of your lights. I mean, granted, it is way over here, but something to keep in mind if you wanted to do 10 lights across there. Well, you might run into some issues. But anyway, so you take a piece of painter's tape and you can pretty much eyeball it. If you get a good light on there, you can see the shadows real well, and you can throw that across there and it's going to follow that angle. Then you'll do the same thing on the other side. I like to put the tape on both of them first. That way you can kind of step back, look at them, make sure they look like, you know, everything's at the same angle, and then kind of go from there. Now, in order to get everything in a straight line across here, what I like to do is I like to take the your pencil kind of on the side of the lead, and you can see, if you got good light, you can see the natural curve of the bumper right here in the corner. You just kind of lightly just drag the side of the lead along it, and that'll leave a mark then that you can measure off of. From that point, take a tape measure, and I'm just going to use the measurements that I used on my machine because they worked out well. But I'll take and I'll measure 1 inch down. Don't use the end of your tape measure, by the way, because if you'll notice, the end moves. If it moves, it ain't accurate. So start at the 1 inch mark, come down to the 2 inch mark. That's obviously 1 inch because you're burning this 1st inch. Put a mark on this end. Come over to the other side, do the same thing, put a mark at that end. Then you can take a straight edge. You can use, I like to use the blade off the speed square. You can use a paint stir stick if you want, whatever you got, as long as it's a good straight edge. Then you can take and go between the two. Get it marked out. You give yourself a nice straight line. That's going to be the center line of your lights going across the bumper. You just want to make sure whatever measurements you decide to use, write them down or remember them somehow, because you're going to want to match it on the other side. Once you start drilling holes, it's going to be kind of hard to distinguish exactly what your centers were. So it's best to write it down and keep track of it. On my machine, like I said, I'm going to use those measurements because they worked out well. The center of the first hole, I went in 3/4 of an inch. Again, I'm going to burn this first inch and I'm going to put it right in the corner where the side mark that I'd put on was. Right in that corner, we'll put a mark at 3/4 of an inch. And then I did 1.5 inches center to center on all of them. I've got 4 lights on either side. So we'll do mark at 1.5 inches from the first one. That's our first 2. Go another 1.5 inches. That's number 3. And then another 1.5 inches. Oop, it slipped. That's going to be the center for our 4 lights, and we'll do the same on the other side. Now I realize this is not showing up on the camera, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera off and I'm going to go over this with a Sharpie so it hopefully shows up a little bit better for you. Alright, hopefully this helps clarify that a little bit. This right here is our line that we use the edge of our pencil lead on. Again, I just kind of took and went down the side of it with it and made myself a mark. And then I just went over it with a Sharpie so it shows up better for you. Measurement from our top edge down was our 1 inch there and there. Straight line across. And then 3/4 of an inch to the first hole off of this corner right here, and then 1.5 inches in between all of them. One little note I forgot to kind of mention, when you're measuring down from this edge with your 1 inch mark, make sure you're holding the tape measure square with this line up here and not at an angle, because if you start putting it at an angle, you're going to get measurements that are off, and that'll in turn put your line crooked. And it's basic information for measuring stuff, but if you don't use a tape measure very often, you know, you might not know that. So there you go. As far as drilling the holes are concerned, I'm going to be using a unibit or a varibit, whatever you want to call it, step bit. You want to make sure whatever unibit that you're using, you want to mark these particular lights take a 3/4 inch hole. And you'll notice, probably won't show up on the camera, but there are measurements listed inside the cut here. You want to make a test hole in a piece of plastic or something and test your light and make sure it works. Just because this says 3/4 inch here doesn't mean that it's actually drilling a true 3/4 of an inch hole. I have another style of unibit, same brand and everything, that the 3/4 inch mark is actually 1 1/8 inches. And the reason for that is because, like as electricians, we use 3/4 inch conduit. When we drill a hole to go into a junction box, we're actually drilling 1 1/8 inches hole for the fitting to go in for the 3/4 inch conduit. So be mindful of that. You don't want to just blast holes in and then find out you're way the hell too big. So something to keep in mind. The other thing I always recommend, and I tell apprentices this on the job all the time, when you're laying out a bunch of holes in an electrical panel or anything where you need to keep them in a straight line to keep them looking nice, don't rely on the tip of your unibit to stay centered along your center marking. I'm going to go through and I'm going to actually make pilot holes exactly in the center, and then probably step them up a size or two before I do my final drilling with the unibit. That way you don't have to worry about it walking around and then your light's doing something down there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get these blasted in there and then show you how to do the wiring on them. All right, we got our 4 holes drilled through. This is pretty thick plastic, so you kind of got to drill up to your 3/4 and then drill it from the back side too. And actually, once you get everything all laid out, you can take this whole piece off, because you're going to have to take it off anyway to do the wiring nice and clean. So it may be easier once you get it all laid out, maybe get your pilot holes in and then take it over to the workbench or whatever and drill it. But either way, you're going to have to probably drill from the front side and from the back side here to be able to get a nice clean 3/4 inch hole all the way through. Obviously, I've already got one of the lights in here. The way that these lights go in, you don't just cram them in with the grommet already on them. You want to take the actual amber part out of the rubber. It just peels out. Set it aside. And then you're going to put your rubber grommet through there. You can crush it down to get it in there because it does have a lip to hold it in place. So stick her in there. Now it should be nice and snug, but if you stick your finger in there and turn it, you should be able to see the grommet actually move around in there. It should be snug, but not so tight that you aren't going to be able to push the light in there. When you push it in, it'll expand that rubber and hold it and keep it from falling back out. One thing to keep an eye on when you're doing it is that if there's any sort of lettering or anything stamped in the or molded into the rubber, try to make sure you get that all lined up all the way across so that it looks nice. These do not have that. If there's any sort of a mold release line or whatever, I like to put that down at the bottom so when you look at it from up above, it's not visible. Stuff like that, little details. Another thing on these lights, and it probably won't show up, but there is some DOT lettering on the bottom. We want to make sure that that lines up all the way across on these. And also you can see back inside of the actual amber, you can see the circuitry in there, and we want that to all line up as well. So once you got the grommet in there, feed your wires through, pay attention to your lettering, put everything at the same angle all the way across, or at least pretty darn close, and stick it in and she won't fall out. Do that to all the rest of them, and then pull this piece off, take it over to the bench. To pull this piece off, see if I can get you moved back here. It's pretty simple. You got a 10mm bolt on both sides. You got a 10mm bolt right up under here, both sides, and 10mm bolt right down here, both sides. And then that whole piece comes off. Pull it right around your winch fair lead and it'll come off pretty easily. Do pay attention to the length of the bolts. If I remember correctly, there is 2 of them that are a different length than the other. You want to make sure you get them in the right spot. But it's pretty simple to take that apart. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of this all drilled out, lights in it, pull it off, take it over to the bench, and kind of show you what to do from there. All right, so we're over at the workbench, got the front piece zipped off of the machine, and we're gonna just kind of go ahead and clean up this mess, put it into the matching side of the weather pack plug that we wired up before, and make it a nice simple plug-in deal. The reason for doing this is obviously, like I said, this ever gets damaged, it can be, or something behind it gets damaged, needs to be serviced, there's something wrong with the radiator, whatever. This can just be unbolted and unplugged from our lighting, making maintenance in the future a lot easier. Otherwise, if you don't care about that and you want to get charged extra by your mechanic, by all means, just hardwire all that stuff in there and let them fight with it, and then pay somebody to fix what they cut up to do the work on it while they were in there, but this is a better option. So I'm going to try and get a close-up of what I'm actually doing with these, but I'm going to try to time-lapse it a little bit, otherwise we'll be here for way too long. So we'll try to do that. Alright, so we got the front end all back together, again just 6 bolts, and went through, made sure all the wiring was tucked up in there so it's out of the way, nothing hanging down, yada yada. Everything looks clean on the back side, so we're good there. At this point we can test out the front turn signals and make sure that they're working all right. I'm going to turn the ignition on. Let's try the left turn signal. Left is flashing. Move over to the right. And the right is flashing. So far so good. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a few minutes and kind of put everything back together on the front side here before I get too much further along with the stuff in the back. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. This whole time I've had the hood off, I kind of forgot. For those of you guys that are having issues with breaking your hood pins, these things right here, try taking some Vaseline and just smear it around and put a dab inside the hole there on all 3 of these, this one too, and then be a hell of a lot easier to take it on and off, and it doesn't wash off with, you know, rain or anything like that. Just a little helpful hint. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for him and get everything buttoned up here, and then we'll move out to the back of it and show you how that works. Well, things just got kind of annoying. You may notice that the bed is, well, it's not attached anymore. This wasn't a requirement when I did my own. Certainly wasn't exactly planning for it on this one, but I guess things change, and as annoying as it's going to kind of be, it might actually make things a little easier, and it'll definitely make it easier to get camera shots for you guys. But turns out that this machine has a heat shield on the bottom side of the bed. Mine didn't. I'm pretty sure this is a 21, just like mine. So now I'm questioning if mine is missing parts. So I'll get a hold of the dealer and find out if mine's missing a heat shield. It hasn't adversely affected anything yet, but we'll find out if I have a part that needs to be installed. If you gotta take the bed off of yours, either to do this project or for any other reason, get somebody to give you a hand. That's awkward as hell to get this off, but it's doable if you got a couple of sawhorses and whatnot. So I guess I'm gonna finish my coffee and in my nice purple Starbucks cup here, and I'll show you why I had to pull it off and explain why it's an issue. But then we'll get into it. We'll make it work. Just extra step I didn't plan on taking. All right, so here's what we're looking at. This is the obviously the bottom side of the bed. Tailgate is up here. Cab side is that way. This whole heat shield does not exist on my machine. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if this was installed at the factory or not, because, and I noticed this the other day, or yesterday when I was putting the remote start on, this plug is broken off of the tab. So I'll see if I can get that secured for them a little bit better. But it makes me wonder if it wasn't a dealer installed thing. I mean, it's very factory, but I don't know if it's maybe something that they sent them out to the dealers to be installed in the field. Whatever. Reason why we have to take that off is we kind of got to get at this wiring that comes in. This plug is what connects the machine to the bed, and then it splits off and goes to the either side there. So we got to change a little bit of the wiring in that to make it work with our new taillight converter. So not a huge deal. We'll pop that off. It looks like it's just 4, 8, 9, 10, 11 or 12 10 millimeter bolts. But we'll get her popped off, get it exposed. But first, what we are going to be doing, and you'll notice I already have this all opened up. If you check out my other video that I'm putting out before this one, I did a remote start on it, and we had to tie the brake signal in back here. So this is all just temporarily done right now because I knew I'd have to be back in here. But this right here is our trailer brake controller, our brake light controller. I guess it's not, yeah, it's not a brake controller, but trailer light, brake light, tail light, turn signal light converter. And the reason why you have to use this is since the machine is set up to use, depends on how you want to look at it, one light will do both the tail light, which is one set of filaments, and then it'll do brake light and turn signal with separate lights. That's how the machine is set up. In the United States, though, our bed is missing the taillights that have separate brake light and turn signal. We want to make it so that it uses the same taillight assembly up there to do both features. And it's the same if you had a truck. Say you had a 90, I think late 90s Chevy 1500 truck where you had a brake light and you had a turn signal lamp. You can't just tap in a 4-flat trailer plug like what this has on the end of it. One of those, you can't just tap that in. You have to have a converter that takes those two separate signals and combines them to be able to use one light, like a trailer. So the easiest way, this is where people seem to get confused a lot. What we're going to do to make it simple and make the thought process simple, consider this to be your truck. Think of this as a trailer. So all of our wiring, this is now going to be our wiring to the bed, in essence. Now we're still going to leave this plug on it, and he should be able to use this to hook up a trailer if he needs to. but we're going to tap into the wires individually. And what we're going to do is we'll cut the wiring here, tie in on the incoming side, and then use these wires that come out to go back out through the original plug, and then we'll modify the wiring on the actual bed so that everything works. It'll make sense when I'm all said and done with it, but let me kind of get you set up with everything or get the camera set up here, and we'll start cutting crap up. All right, I've got you guys perched up on the passenger side tire and the frame. Hopefully I don't knock anything over. I am perched on the driver's side tire, so we'll see if we can make this happen. I can't really see what you can see, so I hope everything is in frame, but your trailer wiring controller will come with a wiring diagram, tells you what wire is what. White is ground, brown is parking lights or your tail lights, yellow is your left turn signal, red is your brake, and green is your right turn signal. So that is the colors on the actual trailer wiring adapter. The wire colors back here, I've already gone through and tested them to make sure that they all are functioning the way I recalled they would, and they are, but just for your guys' reference, your brake wire is going to be green with a yellow stripe. Again, like I told you up front, your orange is going to be your left turn signal, your light blue is your right turn signal, and then the tail light is going to be one of the two brown with yellows in here. There's two of them back here, they both run through these diodes or whatever, but then they end up joining up together up here anyway, so we can tie into any one of those there. So we're going to start with the truck side, which is your incoming into this brake light controller. So first things first, the other thing is just straight green is a ground, because you have to have that for this as well. I don't know why they feel the need to make all these wires different lengths, but I'm not playing that game, so we're cutting that off. Get all this trash out of here. All right, so we're going to start with the actual brake signal. Again, I tied the remote start brake in back here, so we're going to pull that off and make the actual connection. You're going to actually cut that wire. You don't want that going through to the through that connector anymore. All right, my remote start brake wire is hooked back up. Then brake on this was red. Now I'm going to be using solder and heat shrink, so before I do something stupid, slip the heat shrink over it. Otherwise, you know, I'll forget and then I'll be pissed. Alright, next connection we're going to make is the left turn signal. cut that off altogether. Left turn signal on our trailer light adapter. Keep wanting to call it trailer brake. I don't know why. Slip our heat shrink over it. And then our right, which is green, is going to go to our light blue. And remember, these wires are going to the truck side of the wiring. So the wires that go back toward the machine. And brown is going to go to our tail lights. And that one we can just splice in. We don't have to cut that one, I think. Is that right? Let me think about that for a second. The ground we can definitely just splice in. So I'm going to skip that tail light one for a second. I got to think about it. Can't remember off the top of my head what I did on my machine. All right, I'm pretty sure we can just tie that in because that's essentially, what we're doing is we're running the brake signal into this, and then it's differentiating whether it needs to send out a constant signal while you're hitting the brake pedal or if it needs to flash for a turn signal. So it's doing the differentiating. It's really not controlling the tail lights per se. So we're gonna go ahead and tie it in, but we're gonna leave it hooked up through. It should work just fine. If it isn't, I'll come back through and edit this part out so that it's not confusing to you guys, but I'm pretty sure that just ties through. I don't recall cutting that one on mine, but it has been a while. Alright, tape up the tail light and the ground. And we'll throw the heat shrink down on these joints. And shrink those up. And if you're doing this and you don't want to use heat shrink and you want to use tape instead, that's fine. Just, again, use quality tape. I really need to get a new heat gun. This 20-some-year-old heat gun is driving me nuts. Okay. At this point, all of our incoming signals into this box are taken care of. And what we need to do now is tie in to these wires with what we cut off, because we're going to use these wires here that we cut. We're going to use those through the original plug to get us out to the bed. And it's fairly simple as well. Split these wires apart. So we can actually splice into them. And if you don't want an actual trailer plug, like a 4-flat trailer plug, you can just cut these off. But we're going to leave that 4-flat tail on there for him so that he's got it if he wants it. Try to lay your wires in kind of how you plan on them routing. That way you keep your wire lengths somewhat correct. So all right, off of our module, and these wires are labeled. We don't have to worry about the ground. That's already still going through the plug, so we don't have to splice into that. What we need is the left turn signal. That's going to be our orange wire going through that plug again. Our tail light wire is the brown one. We don't really need that because we're already using the factory tail light, so we'll leave that alone. And then our green wire is going to be for our right hand signal. And remember, these wires now control both the brake and the turn signal function, so that's why you only need the two. Alright, and then our original brake light wire, we're just going to double that one over. Throw a little chunk of heat shrink on it, if I can find the appropriate size. Guess it's getting red. And just double it over, leave the loop hanging out, and shrink it down. Alright, at this point you can pretty much just put your split loom back on there, clean everything up, strap everything up, and it'll be good to go. I'm going to wait until I have it all finished on the actual bed of it, and then I'll go through and clean all that up and get you a shot of what it looks like when it's all said and done. The 4-flat trailer plug is excessively long, but we'll tie that up underneath there. That way, if you've ever pulled the trailer with the side-by-side, it really helps to have an extension on the ball and all that stuff, so having a little extra length to get to the trailer might not be a bad idea. So anyway, I'm going to get you flipped around to the bottom side of the bed. I'll show you what sort of modifications you have to make there. Alright, so I've got you guys strapped to my head here, so hopefully you can see what I'm seeing. This is your plug that comes to under the bed there. We are now sending our signal on our light blue for our right hand signal, our orange for our left hand signal, and then tail lamps and all that stuff should stay the same. So what you got to do, since we no longer have a brake signal coming through here, it's going to be on those two wires individually now. So we're going to follow up where it comes in here, and obviously I have already taken this all apart. There are factory joints in this, and the reason for that is this is the factory trailer wiring right here. So basically it comes off of here, makes a joint, goes over to the tail light, same with the orange, and then it comes back to your trailer plug. We're going to leave this intact, but it really isn't going to be necessary or functional anymore. So what we're going to do is our signal is coming in on the blue wire here. We're going to go ahead and snip it right here before it goes off to the tail light over there. We'll snip this one here before it goes to the tail light, because these dead end back in there, it does no good for us to send the signal up like that. And then we're going to get into our green with yellow wire and tie it onto there to go to each individual. So that's what we're going to do. So starting with the passenger side, we're going to snip that light blue wire off. We've got our green with yellow stripe. We're going to snip that. we're going to snip it a little bit long so we can splice them together. Strip that and that. Before I forget, let me go and grab my heat shrink. Guess I'm already down to just my red heat shrink in the small size. It's not ideal, at least not to me. I prefer to have black heat shrink unless I am doing that color of wire, but it's all right, serves its purpose. Slip that over there. I guess we'll hold off on soldering that because I, of course, shut the soldering pin off. Snip our orange coming in. Green with yellow going to the tail light. Do the same on this one. Let's see here. Maybe I shouldn't have drank that coffee. I'm a little jittery now. Oh well. What's the worst that can happen with molten metal? Alright. Take another chunk here. I really hope you guys can actually see what I'm doing because I have no idea what you can see. We're going to take the turn signal, the factory turn signal wire that runs over to the tail light, just like we did with the brake wire and up front there. Double it over and get rid of her. Same thing with the former brake signal wire. That, of course, wants to slide all over the place. Same thing with the brake wire, or the former brake wire on this side. And the signal wire that goes, the factory signal wire, to the tail light. And that right there should be all the modifications that you have to make. We're going to go ahead and throw a little tape over this so it looks like it did, or similar at least to how it looked from the factory. And that's mainly just to make it easier to put the wire loom back on it. All right, and then we'll just wrap the crap out of all this with tape, just like it was before. And I'll show you some tricks with these one-time use tie wraps that they use from the factory. But I'm gonna get it all taped up. You don't need to watch me wrap tape, and then I'll show you that trick. Okay, when you've got this style of tie wrap it's really only made to use one time. If you cut it in the middle of the loop where it goes around, so like if this were in here, right there, you cut it in the middle, then you can spin it, you can pull this tail out of it. Get yourself some flush cut cutters, and you can take and snip that off. At that point, you can stick a new zip tie through it. Then you still have the anchoring point right there. We're just going to tie her up the way it was before. Just like that. We'll do the same thing with this one here. Just like that. And then of course, unlike CFMOTO, make sure you actually snip your tie wraps off. This is where the flush cutters come in nice because it doesn't leave any sharp edges on them. So, alright, I am going to put his heat shield back on and try to tie wrap this up for him a little bit here so it's not loose. Put the bed on, we'll test it out and make sure everything works. Alright, so I got the bed put back on, it's all plugged in. Nothing is cleaned up as far as the wiring is concerned yet underneath the bed, just because I want to make sure everything works first. But at this point we can go ahead and try it out, make sure that the back turn signals are working. But keep in mind, you not only want to test if the turn signals work, you know, with just the tail lights on, you want to make sure they work while the brake lights are supposed to be on too. So you have to test it, turn the key on, try your left and right blinkers, make sure they work, and then press on the brake pedal and make sure they still work with the brakes depressed. So yeah, that's what we're going to do next. I tell you what, if you've got a heat shield under the bed of yours and you've got to take it off, get a hand to do it, because I'm telling you what, that is a pain in the butt to try and maneuver that thing around by yourself. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and roll the key on, give them a test, and make sure everything's working all right. All right, that should be the tail lights just by themselves. Left turn signal, that works. Right turn signal works. If we hit the brake pedal, the brake on the left comes on and the turn signal still works on the right. Both brakes work. And the brakes work with the left. All good. All right, the last final touches are done. That's mounted. All the wiring is ran and routed. Everything's covered up with wire loom. And then I went ahead and I routed his trailer wiring just in case he wants to use it. Tie wrapped it up snug, kept it away from the exhaust and everything, and just ran it down through tied tight to the frame. Down through here, brought it down around, and I just ran a tie wrap around there. That's a easy spot that you can plug in the trailer wiring at. Might have to get a little extension, they make those to plug it in, but that way it's not hanging. Shouldn't be too close to the exhaust, it should be alright. So that is pretty much it as far as the turn signal installation goes. Hopefully that helps you guys out a little bit. Alright guys, I wish I could say that everything just went perfect with this install, but I mean obviously, you know, I had to take the bed off unexpectedly, and that was a little bit more work than I was originally planning on. But what I didn't record was the brake light controller that I installed, that I actually took the video of and showed you. Yeah, that ended up being bad out of the box. So that was nice. Luckily, the AutoZone in town had the same controller on the shelf, which is great because part of the holdup of me getting this machine in here and working on it was it was sold out on Amazon and I couldn't find it at any parts stores. And I wanted to use that specific one because I knew it worked from using it on mine. I know I've seen some guys on the Facebook group say that they've tried it, haven't been able to get it to work. And I think the key thing to look for is one that's compatible with LED taillights. I know that the 48895 Hopkins one does work for LED taillights. It specifically says it on the package. That's one that I used on my machine, and that's the one that we used on this one. But first one didn't want to work, didn't want to cooperate. The turn signals themselves worked, left, right, everything was the way it was supposed to be until you hit the brakes. And then the right one would flash with the brakes pressed, but the left one wouldn't. Went through, tested a bunch of stuff, couldn't figure anything wrong with my wiring, so called up AutoZone. They had one in stock, ran down there, picked it up, swapped it out. Everything works fine. So I got to take the bad one, send it back to Amazon, or yeah, I think that's where I got it. I don't remember. I'll figure it out. If nothing else, it'll go back to AutoZone, maybe? I don't know. But no, I'm going to try to return it to the correct place because that's the right thing to do. But anyway, I hope that this video has helped clear up some things, some questions that I've had repeatedly. By the way, if you have a question for me, by all means feel free to email me. I'll have my email down in the description of the video down there, but throw it in the comments. You're probably not the only person that's had the question. So if there is any questions, any comments, anything you want to say, throw it in the comments, and I do my best to address all the questions in a somewhat timely manner. Sometimes I don't get alerted right away that there's a comment on it, but if you feel more comfortable not putting it out in the public comments and you want to email me, feel free. I will try to throw some links down in the description also for all the materials that I used, the trailer light controller, the two parts from CFMOTO, the switch and the flasher, as well as the LEDs that I used on that. Like I said earlier in the video, you can use any LED light. I know they at least used to make some little lights for motorcycles, turn signal lights, that you could probably mount off at the end of your bumper and have it hanging off the side. Maybe you prefer that look. Had somebody get a hold of me once, wanted me to do one, but things kind of fell through, and they had found some sort of an adhesive, like a strip light or something that would go up on the headlight. You could do that. My only concern with doing something like that is the adhesive kind of
going bad after a while, and usually they don't look as good as the stock photos that they throw up on the ad. But, you know, to each their own. If that's what you want, have at it. Again, hope that this answered some questions, and make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, and check out the notification button too, so that you know when new stuff comes up. Doing my best to get stuff edited. I've actually got probably about 4 videos, not all CFMOTO related, but probably about 4 videos worth of stuff to actually edit and get out there. I just haven't had the time. So until the next time, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later.